when I went to our
Okay, I just turned on the recorder.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Okay. So I think we're ready.
Okay.
Are you all ready?
Haven't prepared.
You are? Do you have
so
water or anything? Okay. So our basic.
Water was not a bad idea. I left my bottle in the car.
Here.
Sorry.
Okay, water coming up.
So we're talking about values. Just because A is true doesn't mean B is not true. Sorry. Values. Just because A is true doesn't mean B is not true.
Wow.
Shared learning, and illuminating our truths, and how to disarm the common immediate adversarial. I thought we might talk about territory or something like that. And ways to use, facilitate, support, and get involved, with these efforts to have difficult conversations that shouldn't be difficult. Have them in a way that is not difficult. I'm just getting you water.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Okay, we're getting the water.
I told Deidre we need her here, but she didn't respond.
What?
I don't have her phone number. Do you have it there?
Deidre's?
Oh,
Yeah.
did she respond?
No.
She's not going to look at anything. She's not going to dare look at anything, I'm sure. Okay.
It's 603-0015.
That's her number.
Right, Jan asked me.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't find it. Okay.
Well, it's right there where I texted both of you. When I texted you, the Zoom room is open.
Oh,
That other number is hers. Okay,
I
so
like
anyway.
this. Totally cool.
Yeah. It's Richard's.
All right, so you ready?
Okay, we're ready.
Is the timer set to 59:59?
Yes.
Okay, flip the silver switch. Is the light on?
Yes.
Put the clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you are on the air.
Welcome to Talking Peace, being recorded here at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future. Thanks to our producer. You can see him right there, Richard Wicca. Hi, Richard. And thank you. And also being broadcast on WBNY at Buffalo's original alternative radio, which we're very grateful for our wonderful allies at Buff State. So I'm here, we're here on Haudenosaunee land, and we're very mindful of the fact that this land has been stolen from the Haudenosaunee. They still exist. They are our friends and allies and mentors, and with all the indigenous wisdom that they have, including that thankfulness. So I'm very thankful for them, and very thankful for this creation. And I'm very thankful to be here with our two excellent guests and friends and allies as well. So I'd say I'll just go around. Oh, and I'm Vicki Ross. I'm with the Western New York Peace Center and the Interfaith Peace Network. And I'm very, very happy I'll just go counterclockwise as our Haudenosaunee friends do. So I would say first to Jan Burns. Hi, Jan.
hi everyone. Hi Vicki and Vivian, and looking forward to having a nice conversation tonight.
Oh, I know.
I'm here from the Prevention Council of Erie County, and here with us, the idea of prevention is to listen and to pause, right, before you do any kind of reaction or response. And I think it's going to be fun to talk about that tonight.
Right. Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I will mention your motivational interviewing that Jan is the director of that program for the Prevention Council. And also a longtime friend. We've done Peace Jam together for years. She's been our art teacher at Camp Peace Prince, speaking of which. So, and then I'll just move on to Vivian Waltz. Hi, Viv.
Hi.
So Vivian is the executive director at the Sister Karen Klimczak Center for SSJ, Sister Karen Klimczak Center for Nonviolence. That is a great ally and friend and leader in the community, doing all kinds of work for nonviolence in our community, and one of them being Camp Peace Prince, which is our summer program for youth 8 and up, really, 8 to 14 for the campers. So welcome, Vivian.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So our topic is very close to my heart. The topic being the Dao of Conversation. So that's Tao, the Dao, that's Lao Tzu, the Dao being the middle path, or, it's really about balance. It's an Eastern philosophy. But there's a book by Leonard Kaplan called The Dao of Conversation, and I read it, I don't know, I'd say, was it 20 years ago? It was quite a long while ago, or more. But anyway, but it always stuck with me because it just made so much sense. It has a lot to do with really sort of how I feel about religions as well. But the main thing was that in so many conversations, people get into this thing of I'm right and you're wrong. So they're arguing their point. So somebody says one thing and somebody says, "Oh, that's not my experience. I feel like this about that," or I experienced this about that. And so it's like, "Well, no, I don't think that. It's like this. Oh no, it's no more like this." And then they're often arguing the points, making all the, getting all the ammunition you can for your side of the argument. And the Dao of Conversation is not that at all. It's basically just because A is true doesn't mean B is not true. We know that there are all kinds of paradoxical things that are true. And so the idea of the Dao of Conversation is very much that each person is bringing in their truth, and they're sharing their truth, their experience of this question or this issue, and everyone is hearing everyone else's. And so then it's like, at a mountaintop, the view looks different depending on where you're coming from. So it doesn't mean one is not a view of the mountain. They're all views of the mountain, and you just see them and share them and learn from them, and then you have a fuller view of the mountain. So that is the Dao of Conversation, as I understand it, sort of a simplified version of that. So, Vivian, if you want to share, so just to explain that title, but if we could go next to really sort of, maybe if we want to say what values you want to bring into this conversation that you see in that topic of the Dao of Conversation.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Well, I think as you were speaking, I thought, I just really didn't prepare for this. I haven't read the book, and
Right.
I thought, that is a value, to be open to, what I would term the spirit moving in conversation, that, you don't have an expectation or a preconceived idea of where it's going to go. So that's just really important, to have that openness, and just to be curious about where the conversation might go, and to be receptive to the unknown and the unexpected.
Wow. Well, that is very good and very, very helpful. Jan, what about you?
I would agree with Vivian, and also with the intention of respect, right? Certainly us all have our own set of values, our own perspectives, but to come in with the intention of, although I may not agree with you, I can hear you and I can respect your right to have your opinion, and to be willing to grow, be willing to listen and to grow. Yeah.
So I feel like, those are so important. I like to think of truth and love a lot. So, I think that first of all, they have a place in every conversation. And certainly in this conversation, because one of the things we're just talking about is that truth means sharing your truth, your experience, and what you think about the issue or the the question, and then love being that's the listening, that's the open-heartedness. When you were saying that about the open-mindedness, I was thinking about we've all done this with the Chinese character for listening that says, the elements are, your undivided attention, your ears, your eyes, and your heart, so that open-heartedness. So I feel like, that loving open-heartedness is what helps us to hear and really hear the different viewpoints that are different from our own. And I also want to bring in a paradox, that just because, paradoxes exist all over the place, that there are, something is true, just because this is true doesn't mean that is not true. So in truth and love, we can share all of that. And so I'm very glad that you're both here to talk about that. And so if we'd like to talk about how that idea relates to our various works. And I want to say, Jan, actually, if you want to talk about it, both in terms of prevention, or even, some of the artwork you've done, but also with us and with the kids at camp, or also especially the motivational interviewing. Because when I hear you talk about motivational interviewing, it reminds me of that because of the non-judgmentalness that's in there.
Yep.
So,
and it's interesting, as you were speaking, you talked about paradox, right? And the idea of us as humans, we're pretty complicated, and we may have a view over here, or we think this is true, and this is true. It's not this is true, but, or instead of, or this, or. So that idea of with the motivational interviewing and taking a look at the choices that we're making, or in a conversation when we're looking at a different mountain each time, that idea of this is true and this is true, and so now what? So that idea of seeing both sides and accepting the idea that there are more than one way to look at it. With the motivational interviewing that we do, we work a lot of times with the adolescents who are making choices, making mistakes, growing and learning, right? We all learn from our mistakes. Maybe it takes more than one time to learn, make the same mistake over and over. I don't know. I can say that that's true for me.
Me too.
But to be able to take a look at something, be able to sit in maybe some discomfort. And that's one of the big things I think about with this conversation tonight. The idea to have the skills to manage hearing or sitting in some discomfort, because either what you're hearing may unsettle you, may challenge some belief that you have or some truth that you hold. But if your intention then is to grow, or your intention is to understand, you have to be willing to hold, to stay in that spot, to experience that maybe discomfort while you question, while you consider, so that you can hear this and this, and then you maybe can proceed from there. I know a lot of the idea of prevention is, a lot of people self-medicate with substances, alcohol, because of really being uncomfortable with that, whatever it is that's unsettling, that doesn't feel good, that's disturbing. And sometimes we just have to figure out how to be able to stay in that discomfort till we can figure things out. Generally, if someone is real comfortable, they're not going to change. If I'm real comfortable with my view of something, I may not want to hear your side, because that may make me uncomfortable. I might become unsettled then, because now you're showing me there may be another truth, and maybe I don't like that.
Well, that is very interesting, because it's making me think of, it makes me think of the Poor People's Campaign and this one great song, "We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful anew. Unsettling force, and we're here anew. Unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains. And it's the unsettlingness. Although the paradox is that when I'm thinking about the Dao of Conversation, I'm actually thinking about people not being unsettled, and sort of like, even that holding those things, those paradoxes, doesn't have to be uncomfortable. I mean, it may be because we're rejecting the other corollary paradox, right? The other element, because we're rejecting it, or it's uncomfortable because we don't believe that A and B can be true at the same time. That the things that, say, a person wants to get out of their addiction or something, what they're looking to get or do get, right, alongside with the things that also ways that it is harmful and negative and hurting you and other people, right? Those things can be true at the same time, and that doesn't have to be uncomfortable in the existence of both of them at the same time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it may be uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It's the uncomfortable part is the pain, the second part that we were talking about. That's the uncomfortable. But anyway, I didn't.
It might also.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It might also be uncomfortable if someone's holding too tight to one side, right?
Sure.
If I'm holding too tight to one side, it may be uncomfortable for me to consider there may be another side or another part of the mountain to see.
Sure. Right.
And that holding too tight, or that fear of what I might learn, might be the discomfort.
Sure.
We sort of cause the suffering to ourselves sometimes.
Right. So what do you think, Viv? How does that relate? How does this relate to, peaceful conflict resolution or alternatives to violence program? That's a program of the Sister Karen Klimczak Center for Nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
SSJ.
We just always talk about looking for our common humanity. Mm-hmm. So there's like a base level of the human experience that if we can get to that level, then there really is no paradox. Mm-hmm. So, but to get there, you can't just, gloss over differences. But to me, it's like thinking that everybody has a piece of the truth, kind of like the different paths to the mountain. So,
right.
In order for me to know truth, that common humanity, then I have to be open to receiving the other pieces. So it takes time. That's one big thing, to give the time, to come to consensus or to come to that common understanding. And for me, that time is about listening and about being receptive and just looking for that peace, that life experience that I don't have. So I don't have that peace. Doesn't matter how long I live my life. If I don't have the experience of someone else, like I'm just thinking of the guys at Wendy Correctional Facility that we do all alternatives to violence program with. So, primarily African American men in prison, in poverty.
Right.
So I couldn't be more different from them in my life experience. So I need to have this attitude, this position, this posture of receptivity to realize that they have a piece of the truth that I can never come at unless I'm open, to the conversation, to the flow of the spirit.
Right.
In all my interactions with them.
Right. That's so true. So important. And very much a way that this is really in that program, in the alternatives to violence, in so much of our work. I think of it in, the importance of this in difficult conversations. And I think, this is why this book, was so big to my way of thinking about how to have a conversation that could be difficult, right? and one of the reasons for like sharing values at the beginning of Talking Peace. Now, I was just saying that Talking Peace, we've used it not often, but a number of times we've used it as a venue where we could have a difficult conversation or a conversation about a controversial thing where people weren't necessarily going to agree on things. And I'd say the best example, my very favorite example, was actually, I'm sorry that Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein, who was just on the immediate previous show that was on human rights and religion, we wanted to have a show about Israel and Palestine. And of course, very controversial. People get very upset. People don't even want to talk about it, not unless they already agree 100%. And so what we ended up doing, we had young women. One was the head of the UB Students for Justice in Palestine, and the other was I don't know if she was the head or I think she was the student leader of UB's Hillel group. So we had the two of them, and this just reminds me that I have to get in touch with them again because it was so good that we wanted to do something bigger with the groups and not just have the two of them on Talking Peace, which is what we did. So you can look back in the previous time of Talking Peace. I couldn't say exactly when it was. It was quite a while ago. You'd have to go digging a little bit back because I think it was in the spring semester. The spring semester for sure of this past year. Although God knows sometimes, those years go by faster than I think.
Pandemic time.
Every day a week goes by, But anyway, it was a great show. And it was so wonderful to hear these two young people tell each their own perspective, their own experiences about a part of the world that they both care deeply about, that is in very much war and turmoil and occupation, and just talk about controversial, talk about, so many people have had so many fights, locally around that issue. But we were able to have a really great conversation that really illuminated the mountain, and the different aspects of the issues there in Israel and Palestine, vis-a-vis, through the stories and feelings and sharing of these two young women. And it was just great. And part of it is setting the stage for that so that people, and also asking the questions in that way and upholding the values, and establishing a certain amount of trust too, and I think that was very key, particularly in that one. There was another one as well where it was about the stamp plant in Cattaraugus, I think. Cattaraugus. They were going to do a plant with green hydrogen energy, and so the Haudenosaunee, the people who live on the reservation, I think it's the Tonawanda reservation over there, but anyway, who are near where that place was going to be used to create this manufacturing hub, which is going to use massive amounts of water from the local people, taking it away from the local people, to produce this green hydrogen that they're calling green, which is not green already just by the fact that it's using all this water. So it was basically about different renewable energy projects and where, are they really good for the environment or not, or where they should be put or that. So there was a woman from from Sierra Club, who's a very dear friend and a very, person of principle and good intention and everything else, and a couple of people who live right there by the area and who are indigenous and who have been investigating what this was about, and again sharing the information, listening to each other, and not trying to argue or listening with that humility and with that need to learn and hear what other people are saying and thinking to illuminate the issue much more. So
I have a question
Sure.
in regard to this whole kind of topic, and it's not so much, a specific item, except for the question of, and this is something that I experienced. I was having a conversation with a group, with people with different perspectives, and a question was asked about an opinion where people were expressing themselves. And what I experienced was I expressed myself and then I was scolded.
Uh-huh.
And so at least that was my perception of, okay. So then I was kind of wondering, is it because I'm feeling defensive? Is it a thing that I'm uncomfortable about? Or is it someone else who's telling me how I should feel about a thing? And it's kind of that, how does that go, right? In these kind of conversations where, there may be different perspectives, some very kind of touchy topics, some very sensitive areas, a lot of emotion included. So how best do you think it is that we should all make sure we're part of those kinds of conversations where people can feel safe, they can, feel that they can trust the others in the group, yet at the same time, have that allowance for growth? I don't know if that's a real question.
Well,
Go ahead, Viv.
I just think, being willing to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, that felt like, I'm trying to remember your exact words, felt like, I don't think you said attack, but
Reproach.
Scolded.
Oh, scolded.
Scolded, right.
Yeah.
To be able to say, hey, to just try to test that perception, because like you say, you don't know if it was you feeling that way or if they intended that. And, so I think just to have that level of vulnerability and honesty in these kind of conversations is really important to say, hey, it's reflective listening. We all know that. We've been trained, but just to say, this is what I heard you say. And, just to kind of check perceptions, and it's sometimes it's easier to just shut down. So it really does take a level of vulnerability to get to that place.
Well, I think you might be the one who shared this with me, the ouch, saying ouch. If you felt like something was like, oh, just saying ouch or something. That's what somebody said. And sometimes they put it in the rules. I've even seen it be put in the rules. It's like, if you feel like somebody said something that sort of hurt your feelings, just say ouch, and then they'll know. And I always think, and maybe this is, I think this is part of the same thing. The I statements. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I statements. All of a sudden, I'm hearing an echo. I hope that's not going to persist. I think it was just a blip. But I statements, so that how we've done this at camp. We've done it at Peace Jam. We've done it. I love, and there's whole books about it when they call it nonviolent communication. But it's basically when this thing happens, or so when somebody calls me or says that, whatever it was you just said, I feel kind of scolded because, it seems to imply that I shouldn't feel that way or something. And then you could even ask for a remedy, or remedy in this case might be, do you think you could understand my feelings being that way? without thinking it's a wrong feeling, or something. So using that kind of thing. But I feel like a lot of times that's why we do this thing with the values or the peace agreement. Okay, I've gotten so that the thing about what values seems to work a little better, especially for older people. Right? Because if we say, well, if we want to make a peace agreement, then people feel a little bit sort of, disrespected, like you think I don't know how to behave, like I need the reminders. Well, first of all, we all do need some reminders. And the more touchy the situation or the topic, the more we do need reminders because it can start to escalate pretty fast. But I remember, one time when I did peace agreement with adults, and they were somebody was like really sarcastic because they obviously felt it was very patronizing to start out like that. And I only felt like it was a way, because the biggest ones that I see are the one person talking at a time and step up, step back are two of the biggest ones that get to be issue areas with grown people in a conversation. Now, and as we were saying, if it's charged up enough and people have different enough opinions on the whatever the particular either topic or just this particular aspect or question, then we really do sometimes need all the rest of it. So the reminders are just that. They're only reminders. Even the kids already know how to behave. It's just a reminder to help us do it. So I think, that, the understanding and also understanding where that person was coming from, that's the other aspect, is what made them say that was about their feelings, that they felt in some way that what you said was in some way negative on them or negative on people they care about, or an idea or approach that they care about or believe in or something. Like, oh, I understand that what I said must have, might have made you feel kind of whatever. And then, I hope it didn't, because that's what I meant was this, or something. That would be the other thing.
So,
Well, and I think in this particular incident, for example, there was a person, we were discussing a book. It was kind of a book club discussion, and it had to do with racism. And one of the people talked about their experience was when they went out of town, people would ask them where they were from. When they said Buffalo, they asked them what part of Buffalo. And their experience was, or their thought of it was, that people were judging what part of town they came from a, did I come from the good part of town or the bad part of town, was what she had said. And so what I said was, well, I've experienced that as well. When I've gone out of town, people ask me, and they'll ask me what part of town. And I said, I interpret it a little differently. I think of it as, if someone's familiar with Buffalo, they're just trying to find common ground. They may be trying to see where I'm from. It may be part of kind of a neighborhood thing, or they sort of remember the place, or they're just trying to reach that common ground. And the scolding took place by a separate person who said, well, Jan, you aren't listening to that first person's experience. And my thought was, I didn't say you were wrong by saying, that. All I did was I brought in my side of the mountain, I guess.
Right.
And to just, I heard what she said, and it is possible, sure. But at the same time, is my side possible too? And the way the conversation went was like, my side was not possible. My side was not correct. The way I interpreted it was not okay. And so I did mention that back again, and I said, I was just bringing my piece of my experience to, as a possibility. And, that was kind of how the conversation went. But then it went into the chat, and I got all this scolding in the chat, and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Really?
So it did shut me down then, because I thought, all right, I guess I tried to explain my perspective. You weren't hearing me. yes, I heard the other person, but we were all just talking.
Right.
And I didn't say, oh, don't be silly. That's not what they were trying to say. I mean, I didn't do it in that kind of a tone. It was,
Right.
Just the idea. Could it be that? I don't know. So.
Well, what you said, you said, it seemed to me, when that happens to me, I'm thinking that this is what they're doing or thinking.
That's
right?
mine, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think, our reflective listening skills that I know we've all been trained in, like maybe just a sentence before you went into your experience, to say, I hear you, and I'm not saying you didn't do that, but just to, to acknowledge and to recognize, and then to go on from there.
Yeah, that might be, if people know that you're not saying that they're wrong. Because people,
Sure.
You know what, we know, one thing we do know, back to, people hear criticism even when it isn't there. People hear criticism much more loudly. There's one criticism and 18, praises, but the one, it's like, oh, that thing they said I didn't do it right, or something like that. So that might have been it, is that because you didn't say, oh, that's, that must really be difficult when you feel that people are trying to suss you out in that kind of way, and I'm sure it happens plenty. I also feel like sometimes when I'm being asked that, I'm thinking they're trying to do X, might also be trying to just do X, Y, Z, right?
Sure. Because that would be more validation of making sure that the first person, that I told them that I heard them, right? I mean, I heard them, but if I didn't express it that way, it may not have been perceived that way.
Right.
And like, as if I was, well, here's my experience, well, here's mine. Like, I'm trying to, like, as if mine is, that's a good point, to say that out loud.
And very, very strongly, like over again and over again, maybe over a couple of times first.
Somewhere along the way, in talking about, literary, and I was taught that when you use but, that it negates what's come before it.
Right.
And to actually have moved totally to saying, to saying at the same time.
Right.
So, if you had
paradox.
acknowledged that person's experience and said, and not said, but but me, but said at the same time, this is what happened to me. And I've just found that so helpful. Like, I've pretty much eliminated but from my writing.
Me too.
And my conversation, and just to say at the same time.
Right. Right. Well, it's just like, don't ask people
that
why.
Paradox.
That's the other thing. I'm sorry I'm getting off the track, but that's another one. The word why. Don't ask people why. Ask them how is it, or ask them anything, but don't put the word why, And the same with but. The same with that. But, yeah.
And I think asking questions is such a huge, important, this is what I thought of when I read what our conversation was going to be about.
Right.
That why are people defensive? And if you have an opposing view, why is the attitude immediately, one of defense? And I think asking questions to me is so important, because if people aren't able to explain to me, why they are where they are, then that's going to take a step toward us coming together. In the sense that, maybe they haven't examined that, but if I come, against them and say, well, that's not true, or I think this, without actually questioning, then we don't really get anywhere. So that's a huge tactic that I use, in conflict, is to ask a question. Of someone that I'm not agreeing with.
Sure. That is very good. And
it's a good tactic. I recently had a conversation with someone who said that they have begun to stop having difficult conversations because their experience has been that it always turns out to be, that the other person is trying to persuade them to agree with their side or to take their stance, or rather than just having an open discussion about the different sides of the mountain, that their perception is that it's almost all the time someone's trying to persuade them to come over to their side. And I think just what you said, having those kinds of conversations, or those kind of strategies when you're having the conversation, to ask the questions, to make sure the person knows that you heard them, that you're not, like I said, the but or the and or something, instead the but, to eliminate the but, to have it be, can you tell me more about that? What other kinds of things might you want to tell me about, or some, other kinds of ways to really probe what it is they're trying to tell you, and then not necessarily have to try to persuade them. It's too bad, I think, that if we're going to avoid conversations, because to me that's how things move forward, right? That's how we grow, is it can have some discussions and listen to different sides. Do you think are you experiencing that at all, that people are starting to kind of not want to talk about stuff because it's too either or?
Absolutely. I mean, we're completely polarized politically in this country, and people are, in their own, bubble of news, and we don't necessarily want to go in that direction, but, go ahead.
Well, I think this is part of why we are having this conversation, is about those conversations and how much people are not finding their way to having them. And one of the things I think about, and we could talk about the immediate adversarial, a little bit, which is the lack of trust. So more and more we have a society where there is extreme distrust in general, in our neighborhoods, in the unknown people, right? As well as in somebody who is coming from a different place than we are, that we, the sort of villainizing of the other side, if you will. And I feel like one of the ways that I have sort of, one is having this conversation or establishing it right off the top that, just because A is true doesn't mean B is not true. Right? And that you're coming at it from there and setting up those values. But the other thing, which the values have so much to do with it, which is that establishing of the common ground right off the bat. So it makes me think of this one guy. I was talking with this guy, and somehow he said, "Oh, well, I'm a well, I won't say anything further," but he said, and I'm coming from our values are very different, I'm sure. And I said, I'm going to guess that our values are not very different, and that it's more that our analysis of what we think is going on is very different, but that the values that we want to uphold are not that different, right? So who doesn't agree with integrity? Who doesn't agree with compassion or solidarity? Do people just avowedly just say, no, I don't like it. I don't like solidarity. I don't like, truth or justice. No, very rare that you would see a person who doesn't like those things. Or freedom. Anybody who says, I'm against freedom. There's my freedom ends where your freedom begins, but this is where we go to the nuances and to the really, looking at, a fuller aspect of what that means about freedom, whose freedom and how does that fit in a society, right? So, part of it is, is that is the humility, I guess, too, is a big help in this. And I'd say, in not knowing, I've taken this saying when we do, a thanks, like the Gnonyo, and all the things that we're grateful for and thankful for in the creation. And one of the things that I've started including is, all the things I think I know that I'm wrong about, because there are things that we think we're so sure about. And then, somehow I know I can make a statement, and then right afterwards I might be thinking, or is it the opposite? Because it probably is also some truth to that opposite as well. And so if we approach it in that way, it makes it a lot easier to not get so mad when somebody comes in and says they believe the opposite.
I'm thinking of, remember the year we had, just last year, I guess, Let's Talk Peace was our Camp Peace Prince theme. And what we did was radiating ripple circles, and we started with talking peace within yourself.
That was the year before last.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't this last.
The Zoom? Okay. And then...
yeah, it was
the Zoom, yeah, not this past summer. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Right.
2020. So we had that like internal circle, individual circle, and then your closest relationships, your family, your friends, and then going out to your community and, and out to the world. And I think what you're saying is if you're not at peace within yourself, how can you expect it to radiate out from there? So not that you have to be completely sure, like you're saying, you think one thing and then you think the other, but just that, to have that humility and to realize that, that I'm struggling within as well, so it's not all externalized. It's not all you, that this is, again, I'm back to that common humanity,
right.
That just that very base line of, we're all in this together.
Right. And we all can look at things in different ways. And, I see those paradoxes everywhere I look. Almost, that's why I said, as soon as you say something, it's like, or is it the opposite? There are some things we can be sure of. And that's this is bringing it back to values and the illuminating of the different things, because so many things are going on. When you say, that something is absolutely true, it's in this great big world with this huge society and so many things going on. There are things that are true, but there's so many things going on that a lot of things will be, a lot of truths will be out there at once that are contradictory because different things are happening in a different way, so anyway, and not to overcomplicate it, because then, going back to, the way to the golden mean is to know your own tendency and to work against it. So if we're making it too complicated, then we want to narrow it down to getting something simpler. But I still think that it's a useful tool, that shared learning, that we're exploring this together, and that, that getting of the different aspects is an atmosphere of trust is established, and people are sharing those things, then it should be that it's okay to share those different ideas, and without people immediately feeling that they're being told that theirs was not valid or as important or something, I'm
thinking of one of Martin Luther King's principles of nonviolence, which is that sometimes you need to suffer. So even if you're putting out that trust and it gets betrayed, somebody tells you you're wrong,
or
you can still,
yeah.
or I'm sorry?
Scold you,
exactly.
Yeah.
You can still have a nonviolent spirit, even with that pain, but that to say that suffering is part of overcoming the division between us.
Right.
And that's kind of a dangerous thing. We need to be careful about, with abuse and things. So.
Well, and that's the other thing. For trauma-informed care and actually in a question about neighborhoods in this segregated city where I want to say, there's so much racism, there's so much pain, there's so much of a legacy from all the wrongs and all the racism and domination and everything else over the years. All of that is in all of our conversations. And so that is another piece that really needs to be, acknowledged, appreciated, and upheld, because, people are, we're at such a critical juncture. Somebody was just saying really almost biblical times between, the wins we're having, the ramifications from all the years of all the domination, and then the threat of more of the same. All of those things, people are so heightened, in their feeling that, it's very hard for people to have these conversations about things that are really, touching the heart and soul, and so much pain, so it becomes really important for people to be able to hear each other, and back to now the rules, sort of, well, I want to say, the setting the stage, or the way that people are going to talk about the issue in such a way that it helps to foster that kind of approach, so that people feel right off the bat supported enough that they won't feel hurt by things that aren't meant to be hurtful. Sometimes, and sometimes that's because they really, because other assumptions or terms. I mean, I've done it on Talking Peace, where I was talking with Agnes about, we're talking about indigenous issues, and I used the word land claims because that's what I've heard them called. Well, she's like, or somebody, I think it was her, or maybe I just came to immediately. But I think Agnes reminded me. But land claims is, as soon as you say it, it sort of implies, well, that's what you say, that the land claim is not really. It's just it's very questionable. Or in other words, we don't believe it, Or it's your claim. You're claiming that it's your land, but it's really, it's ours now, I have this deed right here. Of course, it's all, because of the doctrine of discovery and everything. So we use phrases or we won't see where something, I didn't see where that was going to be an ouch. I didn't see that because I've just heard it called that, and I just mindlessly use that phrase, not realizing the implications of that phrase. And so that's where I think it's always back to the shared learning too. Is that in every conversation, and especially, even where we aren't having a controversial conversation, or especially if we are, that there's going to be those landmines or those places. And the great thing about it is because that's where the learning edge is. As long as we own our mistakes and we can, share them and learn from them. That's where these different aspects of the mountain, like from here, I didn't see that. But now over here, I'm seeing like, well, of course, now it's obvious that this mountain has this little crook up at the top that I didn't see.
Right, because I moved a little, right? Because I moved a little.
Right.
I wonder if I could just share this with you just for a minute. I was working with some parents this morning, and one of the things that I know I've learned, we've talked about mindfulness. We've done a lot of that, different tools with camp and stuff. But this was one that I've learned lately, and if it's okay to share it with you, it just takes a minute or two. And one of the things that I think of too with these kind of conversations is for each person to be mindful of what are they bringing, right? We've all come from wherever we've come from. We have different things going on in our lives and in our experience. And this might be a tool that I know it's been helpful for me, that maybe some folks will find helpful too. So basically what you do is you just kind of get settled into your space of where you are. Maybe notice your feet on the floor and your butt in the chair, wherever your surfaces are that that are supporting you. And then you just kind of do an internal body scan, just kind of from your head to toe, and see if there's any particular physical things that are calling your attention. So, maybe your toe hurts, or maybe your toothaches, or maybe you're hungry and your stomach growls. And you just do a quick scan and you acknowledge it. You don't get stuck there, but you just check it off as that's checkpoint number 1. Okay, I'm noticing this. Okay, I'm bringing this to my conversation. Checkpoint number 2 is what's going on inside my head. Are my thoughts busy, neutral, aggravated, calm? What's going on? Again, not getting stuck there, but just kind of noticing.
Yep.
And that's checkpoint number 2.
Mm-hmm.
The last one, checkpoint number 3, is there's an emotion. Is there an emotion that I'm bringing that's calling my attention? Am I bringing that with me? And those 3 checkpoints done really quickly can inform me then of how I want to proceed in this conversation, just so that I'm acknowledging what I'm bringing along with my words. So just thought I would share that with you.
Body, mind, spirit.
Right.
Yeah,
well, and that's so
sure.
That's so important and so very good. I want to, we're coming in on towards the end of the time now. So, because I'm sure we could spend more time on that piece of it. I want to add, too, that's sort of the corollary to when we come in and we're bringing these values in. Well, it's what else are we bringing in? So we're bringing our values, but we're also bringing in our body, mind, and spirit, and how we're feeling today and what's going on with us. That all comes in along with all the legacy and all the, the history and all the other things. But even as we do, we still have the common humanity, and we still have these opportunities to share and learn and grow together. And that's, I think, the Dao of Conversation. So if you just each have just a minute of just sort of your bottom line takeaway from this conversation, what can be useful that people can remember in having a good conversation?
I don't know that I can pull all that together. It's been a wonderful conversation, but I just thought of namaste. That, when you're talking about everything
Right.
that you bring, it's that God in me that's seeing the God in you.
Namaste. Namaste. And Jan?
I would have to agree with you. That idea, if we start there, right? If we can start with seeing the sacred in each other, then maybe we'll be respectful. We can listen. We can be open and disagree at the same time.
Right. And keep learning and growing. Yep. And sharing together. Shared learning together. That's how we're getting there,
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you both so much. I knew this would be just right up your alley, even though neither of you read the book. It is an excellent book, but it's
Christmas is coming. My kids are asking me.
Oh, good. Well, it's one of the things, and I'm so grateful to both of you for so many things, including coming on the show, and for all the great work that you already do, that you each do, and that we're doing together as well. So I want to say that this is, thank you so much for coming on Talking Peace. This has been Talking Peace, and together we are talking peace in truth and love. Thank you so much. So that was it. Very cool. Very, very cool. Thank you.
No shortage of things to say.
No, not at all. I knew it wouldn't. Yeah, I did look, and every once in a while I'll look to see, did we catch all the things we said we'd talk about? How to disarm.
It was a great flow.
Oh, yeah, it was a great flow. That's the one thing that's always a great flow. Yeah, so thank you both so much, and thank Vivian for coming in, and thank you, Jan, for coming in when I know you're getting ready for your trip.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm excited. I'm leaving Saturday. I'm going down to Virginia to see my daughter and son-in-law and grandkids. I haven't seen them since January of 2020.
Oh, my.
So I'm very excited. Wow. They're all inoculated, and we're all quarantining and doing what we need to do to make sure we're all safe. And so, looking forward to spending
Virginia?
Fairfax, near Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And how old are your grandkids now?
9 and 7.
9 and 7. Oh, you're going to have fun. Oh,
yeah, so that 2 years, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
we've done a lot of Zoom stuff. I've done all kind of art things, Janma with art on,
Right,
on
right.
Zoom and whatever.
Right.
But yeah, nothing like hugging somebody, right? So
No, right. Well, that's so great.
Safe travels.
Well, thanks so much,
Thank you.
Jan. You take
Sure.
care. We'll talk. We'll see you.
all right,
Okay.
you guys
thanks a
too.
jillion.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now. Take care. Love you.
Love you.
You too.
So that was that.
That was great.
Yeah, I knew it would be. It really, it is.
I know, when you
that's
told me what it
always-
was about, I'm like, no, I don't need to prepare for that.
What? No, you don't.
Prepare
No,
for that, it was
I
a
know
relief.
you wouldn't need to, because it's just what we do all the time, right?
Great.
And it pretty much. Actually, I don't think we've had one that didn't flow. Oops. In some kind of way. Oops.